Today we are going to talk about the new Leagues of Votann unit, the Brôkhyr Thunderkyn, and the fact that they are pretty much the Centurions that I wanted for the Space Marines. Now don't get me wrong, I don't hate the Centurions. I don't think they're actually dreadful or terrible. I know that they don't have the best reputation, and generally speaking, people aren't all that keen on them, but for me there is something at least endearing about how kind of ridiculous and goofy and over the top they are, even by Warhammer 40k standards. I mean, effectively you've got a dude in a suit of armour wearing a larger suit of armour to enable him to carry two of the guns that he would normally carry anyway. It's an interesting bridge between, like, Terminator and Dreadnought, even though Terminators were supposed to be the bridge between Space Marines and Dreadnoughts. The Centurion models are, I feel, much maligned, despite the fact that they have their own goofy charm. The thing is, as we know by this point, I'm an absolute sucker for heavy armour, and I love tanks and Dreadnoughts and anything that has got more armour plating than it has any reasonable reason to have, so the Centurions are right up my alley, even if their design isn't specifically what I would have gone for. In a way, we're back to the original Tau Crisis battlesuit situation, where the guns are just in a weird place and you don't really know why they've been put the way they have. Having an underslung bolter is cool, holding it underslung is cool. Same thing with most weapons, to be honest, it's just the best pose. I think we're all agreed on that, but for some reason, instead of having this being held in a particular way, in like some sort of cool double heavy bolter configuration, instead we got them one under each fist, in fists that don't really work properly because for some reason they've only got 3 digits and one of them is massive, so they're not even that functional in terms of what they're supposed to work as. And then you've got bolters just rammed into, or missile launchers, just rammed into the chest, when actually it probably would have been far more sensible to put them somewhere around the head. And I know in Universe you've got the whole thing where it's like, yeah, but they found the STC for this and so that's why it looks the way it does. But of course everything that shows up in Universe is designed out of Universe, and they just didn't have to make them this way, these kind of weird bricks with guns poking out. The main improvement I've always felt that could be done with these is to actually have them holding the guns properly, which is why I totally copied someone else's conversion for these when I saw it years back. I wanted to do a small force, it was only 500 points and it was going to be Centurions and a Redemptor, and that's what I did, and my Centurions, of course, I had to do what I wanted from these in the first place, which was to give them the guns held in the proper way. It was a bit of a rush job, done the same week that I believe that I had the event that I was going to, so these aren't as perfect as they could be, but they are pretty much what I was after from this particular unit. Imagine my delight and surprise then that Games Workshop have decided to go in exactly this direction for the new Leagues of Votann unit that they've revealed today. Speaking of surprise and delight, I don't know if that's the right segue for a sponsor read, but we're going to do it anyway. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Now, if you don't know what Skillshare is, well, even if you do know what Skillshare is, it's an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. Speaking of which, I've decided that if I'm going to properly get some tears out of the players around the table during D&D, I need to get a bit better with my creative writing, so I've been going through Storytelling 101, Character, Conflict, Context and Craft, say that 3 times quickly, by Daniel Older. Actually, looking through my notes, what I really need to do is learn organisational skills. Oh my god, this is bad. In fact, let me just... Wow, I literally have no excuse. Look, I could easily learn how to organise my stuff. If you have a specific skill you're trying to learn, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. From photography and illustration to graphic design to organising to freelancing and more, you can find classes that will match your goals and interests. Skillshare has brand new premium classes launched every single week, so there's always something new to discover, and it's ad-free, so you will never be interrupted whilst you're in the learning zone. The first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to it. These are the Brôkhyr Thunderkyn. I forgot what I even said at the start of this video in terms of pronunciation, so I mean, we're just going to gamble and win and hope that we come up with something that's vaguely close to what they are supposed to be pronounced like, and I actually love these. I really do, because they are pretty much what I wanted to do with the Centurions. They're pretty much exactly what I like in terms of a presentation of a kind of exo or mech suit. It just works. It just works. Having it look so much more functional really sets this apart from like what you could assume as being the equivalents in the form of Centurions. It really works. It really does. these feel like industrial equipment repurposed to allow them to heft ridiculous heavy weapons into battle, and it's just got such a perfect feel to it. You can still see their normal suits underneath. You can see that the arms are like extended with these kind of gripping mechanisms that attach to the guns, as opposed to it being just an extension of the hands, which it looks better this way. This is one of the things that I find super interesting about this. With Games Workshop trying to go towards that more kind of utilitarian look, with trying to make it look as though it's more of a functional item that is adapted for war, as opposed to something that kind of, it has to look kind of like a Space Marine, they're able to do things like this, where instead of having big, goofy, oversized fists that don't look good for anything, instead you have just these mechanical grabbers that they just look like that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're built for, that's all they do, and they look appropriate for the part. You can see that they act as an extension of the hands, as opposed to, for some reason, needing to look exactly like the hands that clearly can't be in there. Now, of course, I'm only really drawing the kind of parallel between the Centurions and these because it's a kind of exo-suited normal unit that has been given a bit of extra ability and heavier weapons by the fact that they've got this extra equipment that allows them to use it. When you look at things like Devastators and Havocs, I don't think they necessarily fall into the same category as this unit, even though functionally they might be doing the same thing on the battlefield, just because those are just dudes in power armor holding guns normally. That is not the default state for the Leagues of Votann. Like, you could just give the guys who are already wearing armor heavy weapons, but in this specific case they have that extra support, they have that kind of exo-mech suit going on around them, which also kind of, for some reason, I'm getting like sort of Matrix Revolutions vibes as well off this, just a little bit. It's obviously not really the same thing, because these are a lot smaller, they're not as lanky, and the guns are held forwards instead of being on arms that are kind of up and out from the body. But there's just that, and the kind of loader from Alien and stuff. Like, there's all sorts of different things that this is kind of reminding me of. But it just, I don't know, there's something about the overall aesthetic of this that it just works super, super well. The big armor plate over one arm, which happens to be the one where the direction the gun is facing, is a really nice touch, as you expect that will be toward the enemy. There isn't much in the way of armor plating going on the legs, on the sides, but you can see that there's some over that left leg. So it's clearly been designed and changed so that is the side that faces the enemy. That is the way the gun points. That is the side that gets armoured. The other side isn't that heavily armoured. That kind of asymmetry just, it looks grand. There is just something about this particular setup that feels so much more functional and so much more reasonable. It feels like it's more planted. It's more kind of, it feels more real. I think that's the only way I can put it. It feels more real. It feels like there's been more actual sensible thought put into it. Instead of just going, you know what's cool? If a Space Marine was in another bigger Space Marine, instead of thinking that, instead this feels like a case of, if we want these guys to carry like really heavy weapons, if we want to really kind of dig into that idea of them being kind of more industrial, they're being more in the way of adapted equipment that is being used to fight as opposed to survive when it comes to mining and the like, we need to make sure that it's not over-designed, that it's not completely ridiculous, that the legs and arms and chest and head aren't covered in multiple layers of everything. Instead, this looks like something you could functionally, feasibly step into and use at a moment's notice, as opposed to how the Centurions look, which is kind of like it would be a pain to get in the first place, and then you would spend approximately half an hour trying to move anywhere because there's no way they can actually walk. This, again, looks like you could actually move around. It may not be quick, it may not necessarily be comfortable, but it still looks more feasible. I mean, there's also shades of the Nemesis Dreadnought in here as well, I feel like, especially with the way the legs are kind of on those steps on the inside of the exo legs. But again, it looks more grounded in reality, and whilst that's not something I necessarily want to see from every single 40k miniature, I think it works for the Leagues of Votann, and it's a really nice counterpoint to a lot of the daft, overblown stuff that you see for things like Space Marines. And that's not hating on Space Marines either. I like Space Marines. Space Marines are fun. Chaos Space Marines are even more fun. I don't have a problem with our poster boys for 40k. but it's nice to see something that contrasts with them as well as these do. It's nice to see similar approaches to issues that have been solved in ways that aren't completely alien to each other, but there is a distinct split off in terms of style, in terms of functionality, in terms of available technology. I just like the contrast that this brings. These to me look rough and ready and capable of taking a battering whilst mostly keeping the person inside safe, but the chances are they're going to take a few hits. They also look really heavily industrial. There's like a lot of cabling and stuff going on at the back there. I'm actually quite enjoying what they're doing with the Leagues of Votann, and even with that said, I actively want these. I actively want to paint these. I would happily run a force that had a good number of these in. They are just hitting all the right spots for me. But that's just what I think. The question is, what do you think? Do you like these? Do you not like them? Do you think they've done a good job with them? Do you think they do kind of have a similar approach in some ways to the whole Centurion thing, but they've been executed better? Or do you think there's not really that much of an equivalence there? I mean, it's maybe a tenuous link, but they were the first things I thought of when I saw these. I just thought, why weren't Centurions this cool? What happened? Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And as always, there's an affiliate link in the description for Warhammer Games, which you can use to support the channel if you'd like. There's also one for Noble Knight Games in the US. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.